Hello, I'm James,
Hi, I'm Jimmy,
and welcome to A Job Done Well.
the podcast that helps you improve your performance and enjoyment at work.
Afternoon, how are you?
Afternoon, James. I'm well. How are you doing?
I'm doing fabulously, thank you very much. What are we talking about today now?
Today, we are going to be talking about how you can ensure that your work is a source of vitality, not the cause of a recovery that some of us experience at the end of each working day. So we have an expert on this subject to give us some insights. But before we get into that, James,
Before we get there's something gossip. What have we been up to? Oh, I know, I can tell. Were you under a sun lamp?
I haven't washed for a couple of weeks. No,
You've
just
definitely got panda eyes, mate. You must have some world-class
yeah.
What do you call them? There was what do you call it? Oh, hang on, it'll come to me.
sunglasses.
Welding goggles. That's it. Welding goggles.
I had a week in Santorini, which was very nice. I'll tell you more about that. But it's a fantastic island. It's small, but it's got the right level between sort of authenticity and tourism to keep everyone happy.
We thought Santorini was an expensive beer.
No, funny enough, no, it's not. It's a Greek island built on a volcano.
Well, there you go. Well, on the other hand, I have had a very disturbing weekend.
Go on then.
I took my youngest daughter's looking at universities. I took us to Liverpool University. I went to Liverpool University. And as I was walking around Liverpool University, walking around corners, thinking, I remember this. Well, I remember this. It occurred to me it is 37 bloody years since I was at Liverpool University. So it was rather a worrying moment for me.
And did she like Liverpool?
She liked Liverpool. There's not a lot not to like about Liverpool if you ask me, Party City. But it rained, as it always does in Liverpool.
I'm refraining from any football jibes at the point when you say there's nothing to dislike about Liverpool.
Let's introduce our guest. So we have got with us Ben. I know Ben, I have to admit, I know Ben as the chairman, no less, of the Deming Alliance in the UK. So go on, Ben, introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Thank you, guys. And thank you so much for inviting me along. I've really enjoyed many episodes of your wonderful podcast. So, delighted to join with you on this conversation about a matter that's really, really close to my heart. I personally believe that, as Johnny's just said, work should have a net positive impact on our mental, emotional, and physical health. It can provide structure and purpose and a sense of community. And with all that in mind, to me, it's a bit of a crying shame that we have a whole industry that £60 billion a year just in the UK, that's all around repairing people after the experience of work. It seems to make much more sense to me to design work in such a way that it's healthy and brings that vitality that Timmy mentioned.
Well, I always get a bit worried when people start throwing figures about, Ben, because, I had Nigel Farage talking about immigration this morning in me. So tell me, where'd you get your 60 billion from then? So
do not put me in the same bracket as Farage, or else we might stop being friends very, very quickly. Yeah, there's a body of evidence that has looked at engagement and well-being industry sort of took off, I get ready, 10, 15 years ago. And that is the sum of money that they come up with. And the really striking indication from that research is that all of that monetary and time effort into improving people's well-being at work has very little, really negligible effect on people's well-being, and can actually have an adverse effect on people's well-being. So that's not to say that fruit in the office and gym membership are well received, and they may well mean that talent becomes a bit more sticky because of those perks. But in terms of enhancement of well-being, when we spend our money and effort directed at the individual as opposed to the system, we should expect that only to be a negligible impact of improved well-being, and we do run the risk of actually making it worse. And if you think about it, that's actually not that crazy, maybe not as crazy as it sounds, because almost by application, if we are directing up our efforts at the individual, the implied message there is, well, it's something to do with you, man, and you need help and you need support. Whereas,
but not us.
when we look at the system, that's a tide that raises all boats, and the attention is there, not on the individual for being flaky and not resilient, but more on, well, actually, how do we redesign the way that we work such that it's more joyful, rewarding, and intrinsically motivational?
Well, so I agree with you. So you're preaching to the choir a little bit, but go on, tell me, what is the problem with the way we work then? Why does it not work?
Oh, that's quite a big question. So if let's look at it kind of super big picture, I think that you and I, Gerald's big fan of the work of Edward W. Deming in the 1960s. He was made famous by his ideas that said that the old sort of industrial revolution era Tayloristic type management was predicated on the idea of control, and that we needed to get away from that. And to this day, I think control is a word that is rarely used, but actually, if you dig into organizational challenges very often, the tentacles of causality will find their way into some level of control.
But why doesn't that work, don't you think? I mean, what's different from the 1950s and 1940s? Why is control a bad thing?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, at the risk of stating the bleeding obvious, the nature of work has changed profoundly. In the industrial era, we took people essentially who had been working on the land and brought them into, cotton mills and etc. And what was right and proper for efficiency at that stage was division of labor, specialization of tasks, keep people's loads as a grindstone, get them to make X amount of tons a day. We don't live in that world anymore. And increasingly, with the advent of AI, we are going to need people to show up not just with their brains, but bringing a level of inventiveness and creative brilliance to their work if we want our organization to stay ahead. So if you want innovation, if you want creative brilliance, then one way that we don't get that is by control and micromanaging people.
Yeah. And I don't think people get this, Ben, so I agree totally. But there's a lovely, I think it's a TED talk, I can't remember his Barber, it's something like how to make a toaster or called something like that. But what this guy did was he said, well, I'm going to make a toaster. I'm going to make a toaster at home. So he went out and he bought the cheapest toaster he could lay his hands on. And he tried to reverse engineer it. And he came to the conclusion very quickly they didn't have a hope in hell in making a toaster. And so when we say, work has got more complicated, it has, because the products we offer are more complicated and the services we offer are more complicated. And nobody stands a hope in hell of understanding all of that, let alone controlling it. So I'm absolutely with you. I think as a management perspective, you've got to back off with the control because you can't control what you don't understand.
I think also just more recently, I think work has changed again. Like you say, Ben, AI is changing it fast. But in the world post-COVID, the working world has changed again as a lot of us work remotely. And I think that has also potentially surfaced the issues with control, because all of a sudden you've got a very distributed workforce. And previously, you had got everyone in one place and you had figured out the ways of working in your organization with everyone in one place. And all of a sudden they're distributed. And I think that's caused a lot of organizations and leaders within organizations to revert back to that sort of command and control way of doing things, because that's how they can feel comfortable that they're getting the best out of their people, when actually almost the reverse is true. So I think
it becomes very heavy-handed, doesn't it, mate? Yeah. So it's about how much time are you logged on at your screen.
Yeah.
I read something about some software which measured whether or not you were moving your mouse and tapping on your keyboard.
Yeah, and how many times are you logging into the building, because you've got to be in 3 days a week, haven't you? And checking people's passes as to whether they had swiped into the building 3 days a week. All of this stuff is all about control. I think that the win-win in here is that if you can create situations and environments where people thrive, do well, enjoy, get vitality, and we talked about this in a previous episode, you can also get superior performance. I reflect back on my career, there's been times when I actually have been enjoying work, and it doesn't matter if it's really pressured and I'm working really hard. When I come home, I have loads of energy and I want to do stuff. And then there's times I'm doing crap work and it could be easier, but it's still crap work. I feel I'm getting nowhere. I come home, I've got to lie on the sofa and have a nap. Yeah. And it's only was through talking to you recently, Ben, but I've sort of reflected back. Yeah, actually it does correlate between enjoyment and what I'm getting out of the work and how I feel at home. So I think as a subject, it's hugely important because, as you say, organizations aren't setting themselves up to create this environment for people to thrive and people to feel that vitality at the end of each day, are they really?
Yeah, but if everybody wants to control their own destiny,
yeah,
and actually just being told what to do by your manager all the time, that's really demotivating. But I suppose if you're a manager, and the real question is, what do you do instead? Don't all rush to answer me. What tricky there, didn't it, boys?
We can opine about how things should be. Now, James, you're putting on the spot to say how do we get there? It's not so easy.
So it is a good question, and I'm not saying it's easy. So yeah, there's plenty that people can do, very often unwittingly and with the best intentions, that demotivates them, So this is a bit apocryphal, but on Monday, the middle manager gets a call from the boss's boss. Yeah, hello there, Joey. I want to discuss your budget and targets for next year. I know you said this, but I want this plus X. And so you're squirreling around working out with your team how you might be able to deliver that without compromising customer service and working people to a point of burnout and whatever. So yeah, on Wednesday, the mandatory resilience training rolls around. So you've got to find time to do that. And let's not forget who's the problem here. You're flaky. You need resilience training. That's the implicit message. And then on Friday, when you're about to go home, your boss's boss phones up and said, I'm sure we can do better than X plus. And everybody wants high performance. Everybody wants their people to be able to cope with the buffets and turbulence of working life. That training was put in place with the best of intentions. What a wonderful way to absolutely screw up someone's nervous system. And yet organizations are doing this sort of stuff all the time. So in answer to your thorny question, I think we need a fundamental revisit in the way that we design, lead, organize, and manage work. And we need to do it in the context of knowledge work, remote and flexible, very uncertain times, and command and control flies in the face of all of those things. And yet we find, certainly in this country and in many Western economies, we find it really, really hard to decouple ourselves from that overhead work.
Just to pick up on something you said there, and James, this echoes a conversation we had a little while ago about demotivating people. And I know this is a bit slightly rose-tinted view, but when people start a job, they're fundamentally excited and motivated. Young people going out to work, you change jobs, you get a new company, new job in a company. You fundamentally, I reckon 9 times out of 10 people are excited. You're raring to go. And then the system conspires to knock that out of you. And I think one of the things that a team manager can do is try and protect that individual's motivation that's fundamentally there and try and stop it from being knocked out of them. And we talked, Ben, about the concept of being an umbrella, didn't you? And I think you had some really good, interesting views on that.
I think that is a key. So for someone who is in a middle management position of a largish organization, it's very, very easy for us to feel powerless and that we don't have control and we get done to, by the mothership or whatever. But interestingly enough, most CEOs I speak to express a feeling of powerlessness.
Yeah.
A lot of that is part of our human psyche and human experience and limiting beliefs, etc., etc. But I think your example is a really good one. I think good leaders that I have observed, admired, worked for, do this in my umbrella or funnel really, really consistently around really consistent criteria and consistently across the members of their team.
So you're in the middle of the organization, and what do you let down to your team and what do you protect them from? And I used to, slightly tongue-in-cheek, admittedly, say to people, well, shit slides downwards.
Totally. Yeah. I'm being choiceful and intentional about what you protect them from, what needs to be filtered but still reach them, and what needs to go down to them in its full fat original version. And I think that's a habit that can have a huge cumulative difference over time. Because it gives people, what we're doing here is we're giving people space, aren't we? We're giving people space so they're not troubled by the hope I'm not going to upset anybody. I'm using inverted signs, inverted comma signs, by the nonsense that comes down from the mothership all the time. But we've described really clear boundaries. We've set what the intent is of their role, and we put them in a role where they've got all the tools and skills that they need to make the most of their potential and do a great job. If we do that, then I would hope that people will find their work is joyful, restorative, and net positive for their health.
So so far we've talked about just protecting your employees. We've talked about making sure they've got the skills and resources that they need. What else can managers do then to make work a source of vitality?
So for me, there are a couple of things. They're both around kind of development. And I know that I've heard you two guys in the past say, well, in the best organizations and the best team, everybody's got two jobs. One is to do their job and their other is to improve how their job works or develop themselves or develop their team or develop the organization or develop the business. So with that development work comes the opportunity for variety, because for a lot of people, work is cyclic, whether that's as a periodicity or whether that's project work. So for a great many people, 1 week can feel a lot like last week.
Yeah.
And next week's not going to be much different either. The neuroscientists have got hold of this. And that's really unhelpful for the human psyche. So the developmental work, so encouraging people to do improvement work, in our view, that's best done by adopting the scientific method, which is just another way of describing experimentation, brings with it not just variety, but a sense of progress and momentum. So I think that is something, a practice, a habit that any leader of any team can institute in their team, even if they keep it, under the radar. If you're improving stuff, you should be gaining time back. So you don't, once that initial investment is made, you've gained time, which you can then give back to people to improve how their work works.
Just help me understand that, Ben, a second. So fundamentally, I think what you're saying is that we all are responsible for developing and improving ourselves, the people around us, the environment. Are you saying that the way of doing that is to accept the world is continually changing and use experimentation as a way of evolving? Or are these two separate things, development and experimentation?
I think one's the objective and the other is the method.
Right.
It is part of the human psyche to want to improve things and want to make things work a little bit better. And I think a great way of engendering that habit in any team is to offer some basic knowledge and skills in running experiments.
Sorry, Ben, before we get into that, I think you make a really valid point, but there is a mindset change that most managers have to make it. We used to work for a guy and we used to say, well, you're management bees and there are worker bees. and you shouldn't be mixing the two up. But the reality is you want the worker bees to be developing their own work and experimenting with their own work because they understand it.
Wow.
So I think there's two big for me. One is coming back to the point about the toaster. Well, these guys, they understand how it works. So those are the guys who really can improve it because they're the only ones who understand it. But then the other point, which I think you just made, which is really important and I hadn't twigged before, is this whole point about making their work more variable, giving more variety, and therefore them getting more engaged. So you've got a double whammy if you do this.
Yeah, totally. And, just to really nail it on, the manager who still believes that managers are there to make decisions and workers are there to head down and do the work, so this is the exploit mindset as opposed to the explore mindset. We are living in a world that is so uncertain, so turbulent, and so volatile. I don't believe that any organization in any sector can afford to turn off the thinking potential, the innovative, the creative potential of their people and whip them into being 110% productive, heads down every day, because your head's down heading over a cliff.
So just help me understand though, because, to be perfectly honest, you guys are far more scientific than I'm ever going to be. But when I was a middle manager working in an operation somewhere, I wouldn't necessarily have been thinking about experimentation. It just wouldn't have occurred to me. So I think to your point, James, there is a bit of a mindset shift that goes from my job is to do stuff. So how do you get across to people the power of experimentation? How do you give people the freedom to explore stuff?
Yeah, and I think maybe experimentation is almost a little bit too grand. I mean, what we're really saying is try it and see if it works.
Yeah.
But most important, if it doesn't work, well, that's all right. We'll back it out and we'll try something else. And that's all experimentation is. I mean, I don't know, Ben, pile in, tell me, what do you think?
Well, yeah, it's a spectrum, as are many things in life. And there will be some people who get very pedantic and academic about design of experiments. It's a whole genre of continual improvement. And there will be other people who say, yeah, it's just try stuff out, make sure that if it doesn't work, you can reverse it back again, make sure that you're going to see the results one way or the other within a couple of weeks, make sure you've got a fair method of measurement. And as long as those criteria are met, then, fill your boots, guys. I think one tactic that I've seen work really, really well is most teams will have a performance measurement rating, right? By which I don't mean a personal development reviews, appraisals, or anything else, but by what method do teams understand whether they've had a good day, a good week, a good month, a good quarter, a good year? So this is the realm of KPIs. And it's an oversimplification, but it can be really useful. So those KPIs can be designed, and a lot of this is unconscious, by the way. So those KPIs can be designed for the purposes of evaluation or judgment. So you did well this week, pat on the back. You did badly this week, kick out the arse. Or they can be used for improvement.
I think everyone wants to be, or most people want to be on a winning team. You want to feel that you're being successful. You want to feel that you're making progress. You want to feel that you're improving things. And as you say, Ben, the use of measures to show that can help you, to your point, see how you can improve, but also it can help you feel that you're making progress in life because that's what you want.
This comes back to a point you made earlier on, actually, when you were talking about the well-being training, right? Because the inference there is that you are the problem.
Yes.
But actually, when you can talk about a measure and it be clear that you are not the problem, it's the system that's the problem, and it's how are we going to fix the system, then you take all the defensiveness away from it and you get a whole lot more progress.
Totally.
So, yeah. It's like magic. It's amazing. It is like magic.
So we talked about a number of the things that you can do regardless of how your system's set up and how those on high are acting. We talked about a number of things that tangible things that anyone can do in terms of protecting people, skills, development, using measures, experimentation. Anything else, Ben, that you would say that regardless of the system that you're working in, that managers can do?
Yeah, definitely. So dead simple. So something that we've learned and done a little bit of research around over the years is this idea that there's a really real, a subtle yet powerful nuance in the questions that managers ask. So it's an oversimplification, but the beauty of it is it's dead easy to get your head around. The oversimplification is questions that managers ask only fall into one of two buckets. And one bucket we label maintenance questions, and the other bucket we label development questions. So some examples of maintenance questions. Jimmy, are you going to hit your sales target this month? James, is your project on track? Are you going to hit your milestone on Thursday? So those refer to short-term, very often numeric, very often financial measures. And the implied message there is keep your head down, get the work out the door. Don't worry about these opportunities to improve, make things better, find new clients that may be passing you by. The other bucket of questions, the developmental questions, they might be, Jimmy, we had a really, really good client meeting with XYZ last Thursday, didn't we? I'd love it if you and I could have a coffee next week and just talk about what your ideas are, so what opportunities might be to collaborate with. So notice that is future focused, long-term focused, and I'm inviting you to think outside the constraints of your turn the handle and get the work out the door delivery, and to think about what ideas you notice, because as James has said, it's the people at the front end who are aware of the improvement opportunities very often. What ideas that you have that we could actually achieve a step change in performance by forming an alliance with a supplier or even a competitor, who knows? So it's not to say that the former is bad and the latter are good. It's not as black and white as that, as many things in life are not. We do need a certain amount of maintenance questions. It would be a dereliction of duty as a manager to be totally laissez-faire. Well, I don't know whether they're going to make their numbers or not. I don't think we're advocating for that at all. But the world that we're living in, the busyness of the hamster wheel, very, very often managers fall into the trap of asking almost exclusively maintenance questions of their people and denying themselves the wonderful opportunity of harnessing much more of the potential collective brilliance of their team by dripping in a few developmental questions, which can lead to experimentation.
And just to plug, we did an episode early in the year in season 2 on the power of questions with Graham Rainbird. And he had a lovely quote around questions, which is, questions create the world that we live in. And so to your point, depending on the context and the situation, the types of questions that you use will shape how people think and the actions they take and the way they behave. And that's something that we can all do every day. We can think about the questions. So there's no big permission that you need to ask for to think about your questions.
Yeah, absolutely. There's another just opportunity here to anchor back to our summary statement at the top of this conversation. And that is, if a manager is aware that every single interaction that she or he has with their people is an opportunity to nurture or erode the health, the performance of the individual.
Let me see if I was paying attention, Ben. So I'm going to try and summarize our conversation. You tell me if I missed anything. So the question is, how do you make work a source of vitality? And you have come back with us, I think, 3 or 4 things. So the first thing is, as a manager, you make sure that your staff have got the resources and skills to do their job, because if they haven't, well, whatever they stand. The second thing is protect them from some other nonsense. So management school of letting the shit slide downwards, that's probably best avoided if you can get away with it.
Be an umbrella.
Be an umbrella. The third thing, though, really is give your staff the chance to do development work, because if you do that, well, two things there, the guys will understand it, but secondly, the variety will make a massive difference to the work they're doing. And if you want them to do that, really, it is about experimentation, thinking about measures rather than targets, and then the type of questions that you ask them. So are they development questions or are they maintenance questions? How's that? Was I paying attention? Was there anything I missed?
I think that's a very good summary. Have we got time just for a cherry on top?
Oh, yeah.
Always.
Yeah, so I think it was Jimmy that sort of inferred that in organizational life, mistakes are something to be buried and failure is something to be avoided. And just the idea of measuring performance can put the fear of God up. Amy Edmondson's more recent work, the sort of stuff that's followed on after her psychological safety stuff, and the book that I think is called The Right Kind of Role. We can get that right if you just get it in the show notes. But she makes a really helpful distinction, I think, between mistakes. So mistakes are when happen when we're in known territory and we just slip up, we miss out a step, or we put the wrong ingredient in, or whatever. And failures are the things that happen when we are exploring, when we're running experiments, when we're trying stuff out. And as managers, being really, really clear on which is which and adopting a response that's consistent with whichever one it is can give people the safety and the security to not be fearful anymore, because that distinction can be really, really helpful.
Yeah.
Thirdly, if you want to embark on your team becoming increasingly comfortable running their own experiments, then one of the most powerful and almost symbolic things that the leader can do is to celebrate the good failures that have happened on the experiments that have gone on, because that's a demonstration of, well, that's the purpose of exploration, is learning. And we've learned something, so therefore we should celebrate it.
That's very, very true, Ben Buddy. It's another example of one where you need to shift your mindset, because just the word failure and the word mistake, they're both things I don't want to do. I mean, and what you're saying is, are actually, if done in the right way, are positive
learnings, Jimmy. That's what
learnings. But that's not how we have it. Back to your point earlier, that's not how we have it drummed into us the whole of our lives. Who wants to? I want to do more failures today. So it does need a shift from actually in that learning, development, improvement. You have to see failures as an opportunity.
Yeah, totally. And so often, very sadly, done so badly. I've worked with a number of organizations who have had process reviews or project reviews or lessons learned workshops that were just an absolute witch hunt and descended into chaos. And we need to be really, really careful and sensitive to people's preconditioning about this stuff if we're going to go there, because we do risk the potential of really, really unearthing a whole load of stuff which isn't going to be helpful to anybody. It's not that it's actually that difficult, but it needs to be done really carefully and intentionally. Otherwise, with the best of intentions, we could make matters worse, I guess.
So witch hunt's not a source of vitality then?
No, definitely not. And Ben, that's a fantastic conversation. When we start off the conversation, it's almost like a human need or a right to feel vitality out of our work. And then you explore all the reasons why it's not, and the system and the bosses and the ever-changing world. And it becomes a bit sort of, well, what can I do about it? You've done a fantastic job of breaking down a number of things that we can all do all of the time. And I think it's a really nice follow-up and some different perspectives to add to the episode that we did a few weeks ago on thriving. But I really love your quote, which was, every interaction's an opportunity to nurture, not erode. And I think that's a really good mantra to think about, the interactions you're having in organizations.
So I think we've got to that point. So that is how to make your workplace a more vital environment. Let me put it like that. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, I'd be really grateful if you would like the show, subscribe to the show, share the show, do all of those things to make a really big difference. And if you didn't like it, keep your mouth shut and don't tell anyone about it. We'd be ever so grateful.
Or, in the spirit of learning, you could send us an email and let us know how we can improve.
What our learning opportunities are.
Exactly. It's not failures, our learning opportunities.
Very good. Super. Thank you very much for joining us, Ben. I enjoyed that conversation.
Thanks, Ben.
I loved it. Thanks for having me, guys.
Nice one. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
As well as recording this podcast, we help individuals, teams, and entire organizations achieve outstanding results.
If you'd like to find out more about how we can help you, please get in touch. Email either Jimmy@itjobdonewell.com or James@itjobdonewell.com.